Welcome to Find It on this evening. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm so excited our guest is here. His name is Mike Moll, and he is a business professional with his own business. And he told me he is finding his zone of genius. So, what does that mean? Finding his zone of genius. I cannot wait to find out because I want to find I want to find my zone of genius too. So he will be with us after we show his intro. So hang tight and let's go. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be. I'm so glad you're here. And I wanted to talk about where we found one another because we're on Find It. And I'm going to pop this up on the screen real quick. You and I were on War Gamers. You were the guest, and I was there as just to listen. Really, I was impressed with your how business savvy you are, and how you got your start, and how you maneuvered through the business world and enjoy your free time along with it. But so let's talk about, because we promised the crowd that's listening, finding your zone of genius. What does that mean?
So I think we're a lot of, as a very stubborn entrepreneur, I always had this feeling that I had to be the best at everything in my business. And anybody I brought on, I was going to be better than them at graphics, at copy, at websites, at everything. And it was a very ego-centered thing. And I held on to it for years because when you're building something and it feels like your baby, you feel like letting other people in or letting people be better than you puts you in a vulnerable position, which looking back is crazy. But at the time, I was pretty convinced. And so what I was doing was I was constantly trying to improve the things that I sucked at to be better. So if I was a 2 out of 10 at something, I was like, I'm going to work super hard and I'm going to get to a 4 out of 10 and it's going to be great. And what I should have been doing, and what I'll kind of allude to with the zone of genius thing, is like, what are the things that you're an 8 at naturally that you don't even have to try and you're an 8, and how do you get those to 10? And it took me a while, again, because of my stubbornness, to really dive in and accept those things in myself. And so that's essentially what it is. It's like, what are the things that naturally you're incredible at, and how do you lean into those and get rid of everything else so that you can just work in your zone of genius, or in your place of zen, or just the thing that you do the work and it just feels automatic to you.
I know, but like being naturally good at something and then also liking it. So what if you're like, I can sing, but I don't want to go on stage and sing. Like, how did you figure out in your line, in your business, what you were naturally good at and you also enjoyed?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had to stumble into it. Like I said, when I was very
I love
early,
your honesty.
when I was early in the business, I was so stubborn. I wouldn't accept guidance. I wouldn't accept coaching. That's actually one of the reasons why I like coaching now. It's because I'm like, man, if I in year 2 had listened to me at this stage, I would have accelerated through so many hurdles. Like I almost lost the business 3 times. Like we almost ran out of money. I had to fire my entire staff at one point because we were just bleeding out. And part of that was I thought that I was amazing at, managing projects and, having the systems in place. And at the time, truly, I sucked at it. The person that was in charge of it, I kept kind of overriding and says, no, we're going to use this software. We're going to use this process. And they did it because I was the boss, which is, that's a very dangerous place to be.
Yes.
But a lot of what I learned was just through trial and error. I did have one moment where I knew marketing strategy was a thing that was like right at the top of my list. I got asked pretty early in my marketing career as a self-taught marketer. I always was intimidated by people who went to school and were educated in marketing. And I got asked to sit in on a meeting. It was a global food brand. You know, they had about 15 people in the room, directors, VPs, and I got asked to come sit in and listen to the annual marketing presentation from their agency. And I asked if I could speak if I saw something, and they said, "Yeah, pretend like you're on our team. Just dive in and go for it." And within about 7 minutes of them presenting results, there's just so many things that they were doing wrong and things that they weren't measuring, and advertising products that just like weren't the right fit for the brand. And I just remember having this feeling of, none of you see this? Like, how is everybody missing this? How am I the
Yeah.
only person? And I'm not the smartest person in the room in general, but just related to like how marketing ties together and
Yes.
how the layers need to sit to make a campaign successful. That's just something that came very automatic to me.
Wow. And yet you learned yourself and that, well, obviously someone saw it in you first to invite you to sit in, or no? I mean,
Yeah.
well, how did that all
Yeah.
come to pass? Yeah.
Um,
Isn't it
so I
crazy
was
how
about,
sometimes, like when you said, I wanted to be good at this, but I wasn't, and I was putting all my effort into that. That's just being self aware, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I went to the University of YouTube. I was running an mobile app at the time, and we were just burning through cash. And I was like, guys, we got to do something. I was selling advertising at the same time just to keep the software business running. And when I had the moment of, we just need to switch all of our customers to advertising customers instead of using this app that
Oh,
doesn't even exist yet, that was when I went into crunch mode. I watched YouTube videos for an entire weekend straight, and I'm like, okay, I know how to do Google Ads well enough. Let's go. Started diving into it, and through someone I met at a conference, actually, I kind of became his like marketing go-to. He owned a big development company, and anytime he had a question about marketing or just wanted to vet an idea, I was just the guy that he called, and I just became that guy for a lot of different people, which got me
hmm.
invited into different rooms.
Got you. I was going to ask you too, before you actually started your own business, did you have any other experience?
No, no, I mean, I had businesses in high school. Is it past the statute of limitation for that? Anyways, um, and so, but I was always good at selling. I always was making money even as a kid, 13, 14, 15-year-old. I was always making money, but never anything formal.
Mhm.
I sold flooring, which was super exciting, obviously. And then I went into work in an insurance company because that was like my adult job. I needed to get the salary with the
Yeah.
benefits and the vacation. And this is how adults do it. And so I went in. I had an opportunity to go in, and I did fairly well, although like admittedly I was a terrible employee. But I kind
Why?
of
Why were you a terrible employee?
I did the uh, hard to say. So I don't like being told what to do, number one. And I don't like stupid processes. I don't like things that don't make sense. And the answer to why we're doing them is because that's how we do it.
Oh,
I actually recently did a very interesting test on leadership qualities and stuff, and I was at like the furthest extreme on almost every category, which was the like the dreamer, the extrovert, the like you're not the guy who did the assessments like, you scored like 0% in agreeability. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, that means you don't care what anybody thinks. You just do whatever you want because that's the way that you think it should be done. And I was like, oh, that's right. But
that makes sense.
when you work in a big corporation, it's like that's not necessarily what they want to see. And that was
No.
the one I said, well, what if I ever were to not be an entrepreneur again and go back to work? And he goes, early stage, intense creative startup. Because if you ever worked for a big company, you would fade into you'd leave within 6 months. And I was like, that sounds right.
But you obviously innately knew before all these tests and personality tests and all this that you needed your own company. You needed to be your own boss. You're not an employee. you
Yeah,
know?
and even though I was with that company for 6 years, it was a big insurance company, I always knew I was in the wrong spot. I just wanted the security. I wanted the steady paycheck. I wanted because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't go to school. I wasn't good. I barely got through high school. I didn't go to college. I was very quick at learning on, when it was like in action and I was in it, I was very good at learning, but it doesn't make you feel like you have a lot of opportunity in the world. And I was just scared that I just didn't know what the other side of it could look like. And it took me having a full on nervous breakdown in my car in front of
Oh,
the office. I was like hysterically crying. My body was like in tremors. Like I couldn't even open the
no
door.
more insurance. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah, and I called my now ex, and I called my family, and everyone said the same thing, like, stick it out, find another job. You need the security. Like, wait till you've got the next plan in motion. And that all made sense, and their answers were the right answers for most people. It just wasn't for me. And I remember this moment of clarity as soon as I got out of the car that morning. I closed the door and I'm like, I'm never coming back here again. And I was like very just calm about it. I went in, I asked my boss if he had a minute, and I was like, I don't work here anymore. Like, I'll hang out and hand off my work, but like, I'm not coming back here. And that's that. And he was like, oh, okay. But I just knew that I needed to not be there anymore.
But this is brave. And the reason I say that is because you find people well into their almost retirement years who are still in a dead end job that they never left because they were afraid to leave and really seek out or find what they really found joy in and what they were good at. So you're saying that the day that you were crying in your car and you just had a complete meltdown, why? What was it that day that made you just didn't belong there? You felt like a fish out of water? What was it that made you have that breakdown?
Yeah. I think my body and my brain decided that they were not going to put up with it anymore. I think I had known for years, even in my relationship. I was married in my early 20s, and I knew that that wasn't the right relationship. And started working for this company in my early 20s, and to be honest, I was on autopilot in so many facets of my life because I just thought this is what people do, so do it.
Oh my
But
gosh,
my,
that is
my
so
body
yeah.
but my body revolted the whole, like, I was never comfortable, I was never happy, and every time I went to leave, I would have my performance reviews, and I'm like, "I want a 10% raise or I'm quitting," and they're like, "We don't that's not how this works. You get, like, 2 or 3%," and I was like, "Okay, fine, find someone better than me. Go for it," and then I always ended up, 7 or 8% every year, and then I got the home office and the company car and 6 weeks vacation, and it was just so at the time, that kept me anchored, and it
There.
kept me like, oh, I won, so I'll stay because I won. But the truth was, it was just masking the misery that I was actually dealing with behind the
So
scenes.
where do you find the bravery? How did you be able to step out of that and say, "Hey, no, no, I'm not taking it." What was the final thing? It was just really, I mean, I don't know why I have such a hard time figuring this out because people don't do this. I mean, you left, you didn't have another job, right? Because that was the logical thing to do that everybody was telling you, which you don't take orders. We already have made that, you've made that clear. So you went ahead and just left, and then you immediately started to build your own business. What was it?
So originally, it was a mobile app. It was called Gbot, the grocery shopping robot. It was fun. I partnered up with a few people, a developer and a sales guy. We built a light version of it. We did there's a Canadian version of Shark Tank that we did. We went on like their spin-off show and did a deal there. I mean, it didn't go through, but we had this cool motion and this cool vision for it, and we just oversold to anybody that would be willing to give us money. We just said, "Oh, we'll build that. We'll build that. We'll build that." And our developers always hated us
Oh, I'm sure.
because you change one thing in development, it's a big deal. And we're just like, "Oh, just like change the numbers," and like that's not how
That's not
development
how it
works.
works.
And then I started selling advertising because my wife at the time was like, "You quit your job, and like, what are you doing? Go make money." So it was about a month that I just like didn't make any money. And then she's like, okay, that's enough. Go figure something out. And so started selling advertising on a very small base plus commission. So that was like my side thing at the time. And I, quickly got a team of 6, then a team of 25. And then they went to Western Canada to open offices there. They kind of all within a year. Um, and
Wow.
then I was like, wait, I'm going down this path of working for someone else again. I'm like, no, 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 no. This isn't happening again. Forget this. And so I left and then just went full time. And at that time, I pivoted. I pivoted all the app customers or the people that were willing to buy into the app, and I just called
Yeah.
them and I said, look, this thing's taken forever. You've already written off this money as experimental. Just let us do something else with it. I'll come back to you next week with a proposal, but like hold on to that money. We're going to make you money with it. And so I was like, what am I going to do now? Like I had no idea. And so because I was selling Google ads, I was like, I think I'll just run Google ads. I think that should work. So I learned as much as I could. And then the next week I was like, okay, this is the move forward plan. If you're good to go, we'll start your campaigns. And um, 2 of those clients I had for 8 years, actually. They so
Wow. I
yeah,
mean, you just obviously have to have guts and grit. And you obviously, I mean, you're saying that you didn't go to college. Did you ever end up getting any college, or you just went to the YouTube college like you were saying? I thought that was funny. Because
yeah,
it's you're a testament though to if you want to do something and you're able to learn, you can do it. And you
yeah.
are.
And but it's funny you say, and I'm not great at taking compliments or anything, but like you say courageous and this and that. I like honestly, it was driven a lot by just I didn't care anymore, and it was stupidity. I'm like, well, we'll see what happens. Like it was there was some of those attributes, but like I think a lot of it was actually just stupidity, to be honest.
Oh my god, you're entertaining. Well, no, I don't think it was stupidity. I mean, I don't feel like it's stupidity when you step out of something that makes you miserable. I think that that's a lot of gumption and guts to say, and it might seem stupid to some people, but because it's a risk, but you're an able, smart, intelligent person, you obviously can sell probably ice to an Eskimo. You could sell all this stuff and you had a team of 25 like in a year. So clearly you can persuade people to get on board with you with things. So with having that, I don't think it was as much risk as it would be for the next person. But so what are you actually doing right now? Because you've kind of made a shift, I just learned. Tell us about that.
So I was running a Google PPC agency since yeah, late 2013. So almost 10 years. It was the app before that transitioned over. The last 3 years, I hadn't been as honest with myself as I would have liked. And so this is the trap of it, right? So I was working 50 to last year and a half, I was working 50 to 60 hours a month. I was paying myself 5 figures a month. I have a team that was doing most of the work. Everything was through word of mouth referral. Like it was just so easy to run what I was running. And it took a long time to build it into that, obviously, and systems and bringing the right people and building the reputation. But the last 3 years, I just have not had the passion to run this Google
Mm,
Ads business. But my last major hang up, which I now is, we're off the chain of it now, but I felt like I owed that business something because that business is the business that took me out of the place that I was at when I was miserable. And for some reason, I just felt this obligation to keep running it.
hmm.
Um, and you know, I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. And I've known for years. And when I told my sister, when I told my ex-partner, who was someone who worked in the business, we're still very close. I was like, I'm going to shut this down. I've given myself permission to turn this business off. And they're just like, finally. I mean, how long did it have to take to get you there? Are
Yeah.
you crazy? Um, And so in December, I decided to wind down. I kept a couple of my bigger customers, but inevitably, when you put something into the universe and the universe listens, sometimes it listens too well. And so the couple big customers that I was like, oh, I'll keep these because it's like that'll pay my bills and I don't have to do any work. They both left in the same week. And I was like, come on. Okay, universe, like that's how this is going to go. Let's do it. So right now, I'm actually giving myself the grace of a learning year. And what I'm trying to do with that is I'm experimenting with different services. I'm interviewing or having business meetings or catch-up meetings with like between 15 and 30 business owners or podcast hosts or just different people every month to explore what are the gaps, what are the needs,
Mm,
what,
I
you know,
like
where
it.
are people struggling? I make enough money through just people randomly calling me up and saying, "Hey, I want to pick your brain. I want to buy a couple consulting sessions." So like that kind of pays for um, my time and energy right now. I'm doing a bit of coaching, but it's all kind of just keeping the money coming in because I think what I figure out in this year through my experimentation is what I'm going to build over the next. This will be the next thing that I build, and I don't want to rush, and I don't want to put myself in a spot where I'm running
Mm,
something that like seems sexy right now or is too similar
yeah.
to what I was doing before, and it has all the same traps. And so, I'm doing some lead generation. I'm experimenting with some video AI tools. So I've got 3 or 4 contracts coming on for that. So that's been
And you're
fun.
fixing your grandma's iPad.
She's awful. She's awful at technology. It's amazing that she uses the iPad, but
Right.
yeah. I remember I was here last summer and we had this moment where the Alexa had disconnected from the internet. And I said, you got to open the app on your iPad and it'll explain what to do. And so there's a picture of the Alexa which shows which button to hold on the iPad screen. And I'm like, hey, you have to hold that button on the Alexa. And so she's pushing the button on the screen on the picture. And I'm like, no,
Oh,
you have to
that's
push
so
the
sweet.
Alexa. She goes, I am. I'm like, okay, no, where's the Alexa? Yeah, push the button. Okay. And she comes back to the iPad. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my
But
gosh. The fact that that was in your bio and his grandma thinks he's really good at fixing the iPad. That was, I
you
love
know what?
it.
I've been experimenting with bios because I was reading through what I had before and I'm like, it's so pretentious. Like, why is there 5 sentences about he's done this and nobody cares. Like, if you like what I say and I offer something that you need, great, call
Yeah.
me. But like, I don't know, these big hyped up bios at the beginning, I was like, no, we're going 2 sentences and then some joke about a family member. That's how they're going
Yeah.
from now on.
Yeah. That was I when I got that, I belly laughed because I'm like, I've never gotten a bio like this. I loved it. I mean, I'm like, there's some humor. I mean, you were on Joe Ingram's show and he is our connection and he is hilarious. So, I think that's a little humor goes a long way for sure with me anyway. But let's see how much time how long have we been talking? Oh, wow. I mean, this is going by really quickly. I wanted to talk to you a little bit because the thing that's intriguing about you too is not just your honesty about, being blatantly honest about how you started this business and how you don't really like to take orders and you're not a good employee. And you're telling me all these things that you're not good at, but you're really good at a lot of things. Okay. So it's clear you don't like to brag on yourself, but you've done a lot. And we haven't even scratched the surface to talk about what all you've done. But let's rewind a little bit. And I remember you saying that you kind of had a scarcity mindset. Explain that to me and to our
Yeah.
audience what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I grew up, I'm not going to go that far back, but I grew up with not a lot of information around finances, money management. Like it was like nobody talked about it. My grandfather was the only one who was like in it, and we didn't really like chat. But my immediate family and the way it kind of, you know, fell apart in the early
Trickled down to,
early years,
yeah.
like we never really got there. And so you know, I I was always worried because I didn't go to college. I was always worried that everybody was smarter than me and was going to make more and would have more opportunities. So I just had this mindset around like I have to really like go all in and go super hard just to stay afloat. And I had that mentality for a long time. So when I started my business, it was the same thing and it was part of why I didn't want to give any meaningful parts or roles or tasks to anybody because I was like, no, if anything breaks, it goes back, this thing goes to zero, and then I'm screwed and I've got nothing. And so it was out of this scarcity of like, well, what if this client leaves, or
Oh,
what if we can't,
yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
all of those things just kept me so in such a place of fear for a bunch,
Mhm.
more years than when I look back, way more years than I would have liked. Um, and it took a couple of like weird moments to realize about how much abundance there actually is and how much availability there is. And now I hear all the time these people, "Oh, I don't want to, this person's competing with me. I don't want to talk to them, and I don't want to give them my secrets." And like I'm just like, "Oh, you want to know how I'm doing this? Like, yeah, this is it. Go for it. Like, go make your money." Like, there's just so much opportunity in the world. And when you are living in this mindset of like, there's this limited amount and I have to get mine and I have to block everybody else out, it just leaves you in a really crappy space for, you know, networking, making friends. Like it leaks into every part of your life. And unfortunately I was stuck there for a period.
Well, and when you were on War Gamers too, you shared so much about your business and how you run it. They were throwing up all kinds of things for you to explain, and you shared that so openly that really surprises me. But you know what? That just goes to show how much you've grown as a person, and that you don't live in fear any longer. Because I mean, let's face it, you're doing it again, Mike. You have completely dismantled a business that you created and ran and made successful. And now you're taking a learning year. And in that year, I mean, when you tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm really interested. You said you're going to find where there are gaps. And so you're meaning where there's a niche, a need in something, and then you want to go fill that?
Yeah. And so part of my process, so a couple of things I was thinking about is like, what if I had an agency that booked people on podcasts? They did like really unique outreach and they created these awesome bios, and they, whether it's an author or a CEO and they want to get more media exposure, how would they do it? So I interviewed 25 podcast hosts in like 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, tell me about this, tell me about that. And so what I learned was, I was like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 auxiliary products that hosts would actually want, and services that they would need that would make their lives and make having a podcast easier. None of which I wanted to build, including being the guy that helped people book on shows. I've looked at the metrics and I was like, this is not what I want. But I do these experiments quite frequently, and so I'm starting now with with people in creative agencies, and I plan to, get on the phone with 30 companies in the next 30 days. Super quick, 15
Wow.
minutes. I have a few finite, like very specific questions that I ask,
Yeah.
that creates conversation where they're like, oh, but I just wish I had this. And when I hear that from like 3 or 4 people or 5 people in the same field, I'm like, is there a is there a product that exists now that I can just white label? Like, is there something that exists that I could just slap my logo on and be like, hey, this is $1,000 a month. Like, there's so much
Yeah.
technology and so many things out there. Like, you don't have to build. I just feel like, so having those conversations creates these opportunities, and if you can find the easy way, whether it's a simple service or a system that can fix the problem, or a piece of technology that you can slap your name on and mark it up a thousand
Absolutely. I mean, you
percent.
don't have to recreate the wheel, right? So what you're saying is if there's a need for something and then you can go and find it for them, that's such an amazing resource. You know,
Yeah,
um, even in life when people go to a therapist, it's like they've got all the tools, they just need help finding it. And so you can be that person to be, if you create the whatever it is, you can. Or if there's already something out there, you can find it and slap your label on. And that's so good. That's really good. So this full year, so 2023 is going to be you learning and finding what you want to do next. That's really cool. And I want to go back to this really quickly. In the beginning, when you were talking about, you know, finding something that you're really good at and that you also enjoy, getting better at that, and then you delegate to other people the things. So give me an example because there were all these times you were just out traveling. For a long time, I was trying to get you on the podcast, and you were like in Africa. So you got your business to such a place that you could be remote at all times. And so like I didn't work through you to get you on the show. You have your people doing that. So what other stuff do you not do?
There's an abundance. So here's a couple things that I learned that I suck at. I suck at following up. I suck at remembering. I suck at calendars. I suck at time changes. I suck at email. And so I have a full-time person who just deals exclusively with that. So I
Okay.
will. So for example, I'm going to a wedding in Croatia at the end of August, but I just found out another friend's going to be in Prague or Paris on other days. And so I pick up my phone, I send a voice note. I'm like, I need flight options for Prague and Paris on these days, or Croatia for 3 people, returning this, 2 people going to Toronto, 1 person going to Mexico. Okay, bye. And that's it. I
What?
just send that voice note. And then I wake up the next day with a Google Doc of like that whole
Okay.
map of like how that could all happen. So I this comes from a place where like I've showed up to resorts before and they're like, you're not here yet. This is not, I'm like, isn't it this day? And they're like, no. And even recently, I was in Puerto Vallarta and Sayulita for a few weeks before I came to Canada just to relax. And the Airbnb host came and knocked on the door Saturday at 1 p.m. He's like, hey man, can you leave? Like, we got to clean this apartment. I'm like, no, I'm here till Monday. And he's like, no, you're not. Because my assistant was off and I booked it. And I was like, I thought I booked it till Monday. He's like, you didn't. Like
Oh,
I open tabs and I get excited and my credit card goes and then it's done. And I wake up like I didn't even coordinate this properly.
oh my gosh.
Um,
So yeah, you got to know what you're good at and what you're not. And that's why you have
mm,
an assistant for that. Daggone it, they take vacations. You needed her.
what is that about? No,
Yeah,
but
what's that about? Now I'm all screwed up. I got to leave early because I'm not even supposed to be here. Oh my gosh, you're too funny.
so
Too funny. But
what
yeah,
I did
go ahead.
no, so what I think I did a good job of doing eventually was saying, okay, these are the things that I was doing, and I was either making errors in them, but bigger than that, I think the things were like they were a really big problem where I would go to sit down to do them, and
Yeah.
my brain would be like, "Ah, let's go do something else. I don't want to do this." Or I would get like anxiety or stress around just completing a simple task. And I'm like, these are the things I shouldn't be doing. And so I found people to do almost everything. So all I do now is make videos that go out to people like, uh, whether it's prospecting videos or whatever. I get on the phone when something needs to be sold, and when somebody needs to talk marketing and strategy and like how to make their business better, I'm on that call.
Yeah,
And as long as I
you're
do,
passionate in that. Yeah.
yeah, as long as
You
I do
enjoy
those
that.
things, the business makes money. And
Yeah.
I don't mind. I think where people like, this is that scarcity mindset. They're like, well, but I want to keep all the money for me. I would rather make like $10,000 a month to myself and work 60 hours a month and pay to have all the other headaches out of the
Everybody else.
way. So I can
Yeah.
travel, I can do jujitsu, I go to the beach, I take a nap every day at 2 o'clock, which is insane, but I love it. I love taking naps.
It's
So
good for
like
you.
I would rather take out what I need in terms of revenue and then put all the other money back in to not having to do anything I don't want to do.
I love that. Boom. I love it. I love that, Mike. It's good. I mean, let that simmer a minute. So, we're winding down. So, the question I ask all of my guests in your life, Mike, and we've talked a lot about a lot of things, but in your life, what have you found that you can share with us to help inspire us to find it too?
Listen to your intuition. One thing I brazenly ignored for a long time was like my body telling me I don't want to do this. I stayed in a job for 6 years, and my body the whole time was like, I don't want to do this. I was in a marriage for a few years, and the whole time my body was like, I don't want to be here. And I think we have these processes and these life cycles and these things that we think we need to do because that's what a parent did or that's what we see other people doing. And I think for years I really strictly abided by that, and I'm like, no, no, I have to aim to own a home, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do that. And now that I actually started listening to myself
Mm.
and fighting against the things, like, even if my family looks at me like I'm insane. I'm a 37-year-old single guy. They just like, I don't know, you just do stuff on the internet. Like, I don't understand what your business is. Most of my family didn't even know I had a business, and they were like, "Wait, you have 5 employees?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Well, don't they cost this much?" They start, you could see the math going on. They're like, "But that means you'd have to make." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a business. I run a business just because it's from the computer." But single guy. I was in 10 countries last year. All my possessions fit into a carry-on and a backpack, but like that's what I like to do. And so we often reject what we actually want to be doing, because we have a lot of these weird pressures with family and with society, and I would just encourage people to reject or rebel on at least a couple of those things, because what comes out of that is like you giving yourself permission to experiment and abandon stuff that doesn't serve you. And as soon as you start abandoning the stuff that doesn't serve you, you just start collecting the stuff that does serve you. And then you blink and you're like, I'm super happy and content. And like, I don't, I don't have any stress. I don't have any, you have these little things, but you're like, it can just be so simple. And I think we overcomplicate as humans because of pressures. So I'm not saying go crazy and sell all your stuff and leave your relationships, but I think about the
Listen to
things
your
that
intuition.
when you go to do them, if you get tension, if you get a headache, if your brain starts swimming or going off in different directions, like, step back and evaluate what that is. Like, you know, is it just nerves, or is this something like I genuinely don't want to do? And I talk to people all the time, and I promise I'll shut up after this, but
That's
I
fine.
I talk to people all the time where they're like, "Well, okay, but I can't delegate stuff because I work in this company and I have to be the one that does it." Okay, great, but like, what are the other things that you could delegate? Like, maybe you hate organizing stuff. Like, hire a virtual assistant to do all your trip planning. Hire a virtual assistant to like make arrangements, like, hey, book me, hey, book me a reservation. I'm going on a date. This is the type of place I want. This is the time and date range. And I'm just like, and then you just let it go, right? I don't like doing that stuff. And so I delegate a ton of stuff just in my personal life because it's stuff that gives me stress and anxiety, and I don't want to do it. And a lot of people think, oh, it's got to be, data entry or graphic design. It can be anything. You can
Hmm.
outsource labor for absolutely anything. If it's taking up energy that you don't want to give it, then get rid of it.
That is really good advice. And, sometimes good advice isn't always the easiest to take because you have to make changes. And I think listening to your intuition, when you said that, like, and listen to your body. And if you're getting a headache or whatever, and you're constantly feeling tight and doing this certain thing or being around these certain people, maybe evaluate that a little bit.
Yeah.
That was I loved that. Thank you for sharing. That was really good. I really appreciate you sharing that. And before we go, because I didn't pop this up here on the right time, it's going to cover us, but I want to talk a little bit, and you can talk when this is up front. You know this because you fix a lot your grandma's laptop. But talk a little bit about this. This is coming up. So if anybody has any is this right? Yeah, get
Yep.
booked on podcasts. This is something you're doing currently.
Yeah, so this is a conversation I've had with a lot of people lately, and a lot of people. So I have done, I think I did like 20 something podcasts last year. And I always get people that are asking, "Oh, how do you do it?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a couple pieces of it, right? Like you have to reach out in a unique and interesting way that shows the person that you put some effort into seeing their show. You have to be a good guest. You have to, know how to compile a story and know how to like stick on track with stuff. And so I decided to put together this workshop of like how I did it. And for a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't know, I need a PR firm or I need it has to be this big thing. Like the person who booked my interviews was my house cleaner in Mexico, who I taught to do this by using like a really simple.
Oh
I was
my
like, here's all the
God.
instructions. Here's the SOP. Like here's the process. Just follow it. And now she's like, I'm speaking engagements and workshops and blah blah blah. And
That's
she's
so
yeah,
cool.
it's like a very everyone can do it. It's a system that I've used to book myself. Um, and obviously it doesn't relate to this one, but I think when I reached out to Joe, I think it was Destiny that did it. So she knew how. So this process is like, how do you research them? How do you validate them? How do you reach out? How do you be a great guest? It's going to be about a 90-minute workshop on just like everything I've learned and how I did it.
And you're on all handles, and that's in your bio. I have it posted, so anyone that's interested in following you, Mike, has the information. And I appreciate you being here. First of all, I want you to know that. And my favorite thing is what you said you found in life. Like you nailed it. Like I'm going to think about that. I'll rewatch this again. And the other thing that I was going to say is when you were on Joe's on War Games, I remember you talking about putting together things and then it's set so that
Mhm.
even your grandmother could understand the directions on how to do it. I remember you saying that on his show and I thought that was funny. So that's good. I mean, if you're going to delegate things out, you might as well have it all, in the system and
Yeah.
let them. And didn't you even say that you sent it out to a bunch of people in your family to say, "Do you understand how to do this?" and let them
Yeah.
walk through it? And they're like,
Yeah.
"Finally, okay, we've got this." You know,
Building simple systems. Can I admit something though? It's
I
actually
want to know what.
I was telling someone about who was I telling about this? Oh, I was talking to Destiny. There's a moment I went back and watched it, and there's a moment where my face washes over with this like really dumbfounded because so the building system thing was always the building systems thing. But what happened, the exercises that I talked about in order to get to the business, like to building the system, I had actually never thought about incorporating all of those pieces. And as I was on, I was like, wait a minute, this exercise actually ties into this and to that. And there's a moment on the show where I'm like, does this
You
actually
figured
make
it.
sense? I've, I've never actually said this out loud before. Like, does this make sense? I think it makes sense. I'm going with it. And then I just kept going. So like the individual pieces of content were consistent,
Consistent, yeah.
but the way that I pulled them together, I had never done it. And in the moment, as I started like getting excited about it, I was like, I really hope this makes sense. I really don't know if it does,
It
but
did.
I don't have time now, so let's just go. So in that moment is when the specific exercises one after another. I had never pieced that together before,
Oh
and I
my
did it
gosh,
like
that's
live on the show, and
hysterical.
I was like, in my
Oh,
back of
man,
my
I hope
mind, I'm
Joe
like,
listens to this. He'll be calling you, "What did you say? You didn't know what you're talking about. How'd you" That's great. I love it. Well, before we wrap up, Mike, is there anything else you would like the listeners to know or anything parting words you'd like to leave them with?
yeah, I would say, it's a common thing, but my personal experience with the concept of life being short and you should just do whatever you want is so I like getting to coach now that I've kind of built something and I know that it works and I can show other people how to do it, and that's great. But I think a lot of people look at my life and they say, well, you quit this job and now you're off on these adventures and you're doing all this stuff. My one of my biggest motivators, and this is a little bit kind of sad, but one of my biggest motivators was the fact that like my father did nothing. He had this potential, but he played scared forever and he
Safe.
stayed in a job for 30 years that he hated. And then he died of cancer at 62, miserable. And like, I just saw that and I was like, man, I'm not going down that path. I'm not doing it. And so like that's how it hits for me, where I'm like, you could just drop dead. So like, why spend time doing things that don't bring you joy? And it's not like you can just drop everything you're doing. Obviously, there's obligations and children and this and mortgages and all that, but you can find these small things to make your life feel more like yours, that you have got more control and that you've got more ownership over it. And those small, even making those small changes will have a big impact on your outlook. So I just encourage people.
I love that. Making your life more yours. That was powerful. Making your life more yours. That's another mic dropper. Look, your name's Mike. He keeps dropping the mic. Okay, folks. So appreciate everybody being here with Mike tonight. You can Mike Moll at the Mike Moll. That's a bloop bloop tongue twister. And in his bio below it, I have all his handles if you want to follow him and all of his adventures, because he's super fun and he goes a lot of different places. So anyway, with that, I'll see y'all again next Wednesday, same time, same place, different guest. And with that, we'll say goodbye and have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
That floats around me.